Tal gente, bienvenido de vuelta a Emprendementex. Antes de comenzar, por favor sigan nuestro canal de YouTube. Estamos como Emprendementex, en Instagram estamos como Emprendementex y en TikTok estamos como Brian Rayita abajo Emprendementex. Sigan y compartan nuestro contenido y también sigan y compartan el contenido de nuestros patrocinadores y el contenido del invitado del día de hoy, que es la mejor manera de nosotros apoyar apoyar al emprendedor. El episodio del día de hoy no va a ser en español. Así que si usted no entiende inglés, póngale ponga los subtítulos, porque el invitado del día de hoy no habla español tan bien como para hacer esta entrevista. Así que vamos a hablarla en inglés. El invitado del día de hoy se llama Luke Abbott y la historia de él es bien interesante porque el señor Luke Abbott es de un lugar muy, muy, muy lejano. Y thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And I was just telling our folks watching at home that you are not from here and that you were from a very far away place. So where are you from and why are you here in Panama? Because Luke told me his story more or less in a little voice note, and it was very interesting, but it was just like a teaser. It was like a teaser of the movie. And now, now I'm here, and I want to learn how you got from where you're from all the way here, and all the things you've done too, because they were very interesting as well.
Yeah, perfect. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Good to be here. And I've been here in Panama for nearly 7 years. So I do consider it home now. And I don't see myself leaving anytime soon. So Panama is home, but it was a long way to get here. I'm from New Zealand originally, and I left New Zealand in 2010.
Are you from Auckland?
From Christchurch, which is in the South Island, like a bit further south. Auckland's obviously the
that's the capital.
Yeah, well, Wellington's the capital, but Auckland's the biggest city.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's a very far away at the bottom of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of left 2010. I sort of finished university and, did the very traditional route, went to university, studied finance and economics, and I was a very outdoorsy person.
Mm-hmm.
And, sort of getting towards the end of my degree, and I thought, God, looking at the rest of my life stuck in an office, that can't be it. There has to be something more, what am I going to do? And as a young man, sort of, 21 years old, I went to the UK and joined the parachute regiment.
Why?
I think there was an element of me, like that search for adventure, like there has to be something else. I think, it's a very good question. It's a very simple question, why? But it has a very deep answer, I think. And I was really into like sailing, motorbikes, anything that was outdoors, in the ocean. And the idea of just sort of being cooped up in an office at
Mm-hmm.
21, like scared me. And, if you're from a Commonwealth country, you could go and join the British Army.
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost seemed like an escape from, put the real world on hold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go and do that for 4 years. So I spent 6 years as a sniper in the parachute regiment in the UK.
How was that being a sniper?
It's like every boy's dream, right? To be a sniper.
I've never met a sniper. You're the first.
I mean, it's really like the parachute regiment is like a very elite regiment in the UK.
Uh-huh.
And so the training is very intense. You build that camaraderie, like you're surrounded by people that, you're trusting your life with. You live together, you train together, you go out together, you do everything together. So it's a very close-knit sort of community.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a young man's game. I had an amazing time. I met amazing people. But as I was sort of, after 6 years at 27, 28, it's, what's next in my life? Like, I don't want to be, I didn't want to do that forever. It was
Mm-hmm.
something to do as a young man, like...
but you didn't see yourself being, in that structure.
Not like doing 20, 30 years in the army, I don't think. And you sort of have to get out. But I wanted to get out before 30 to sort of set my second career up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to sort of get out and I ended up in London, working for a bank, Barclays. Then I went down to Chile for a little bit.
What did you do in Barclays?
I was in the corporate bank. I was
Okay.
at risk assessment. I came in on a military sort of, they ran like a military transfer scheme in the UK, which was really, really popular. I did some postgraduate like finance stuff, you know, and then was building my sort of CV and things after the army. And then, I was there, it was good. And then ended up in Chile, which was my entry to Latin America.
Why Chile?
I was offered a job in Chile.
Okay.
From London, so
okay.
I was offered a role out there. And I said, I don't speak any Spanish. They're like, you'll pick it up, don't worry. So I flew out, I think it's 2018, flew out to Chile, 2 suitcases.
And how was that?
It was definitely,
A culture shock?
It was a culture shock for sure. And especially being in like finance and investing, like in the UK, everyone is quite boring when it comes to this stuff. You get your first job out of university, you start saving for retirement, everyone's kind of like focused on the future. And the shock that I got when I got to Chile is, you're starting to talk about, starting to like meet with people and talk about the future. And they were very much more, the focus was very much right now. Like why do I even need to think about 10, 20, 30 years from now? Which wasn't the focus. It was, so that culture shock of like how I speak to people, how I sort of, I had to like change everything I did because people just think about money very differently.
Yeah.
They have a very different approach. So
this whole like, you're going to build a family trust that's going to be in your, your lineage for 3 generations. People are just like, man, I just want one CD and what's my interest rate, bump it up a point kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think, especially in Panama, I think, is very conservative. Plaza Fijos, land, property. The younger generations coming through are much more, I think, open-minded and adventurous about what's out there, and technology is a big enabler of that. It's breaking down barriers and things become much more international and easier to do business. But it's still a process. And so I was in Chile for just over a year, and then with that same firm, I moved to Panama in 2019. So about 9 months before the pandemic hit.
And how did you get to Panama? Why did you come here?
So that firm was opening. It was the firm that I used to work for. They were opening an office. They were getting licensed in Panama. There was a British company. So I came up to like basically set up the office, run the team, grow the team, build it out, manage it, take it from there. And so I did that for a few years before
doing your own thing,
eventually stepping away.
And how was when you got here? You were just a couple of months into the country, and then COVID hit.
Yeah,
and you're locked down because our lockdown was pretty harsh. So what did you do in during that year?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I love Panama. Like, I don't see myself ever leaving. Obviously, the pandemic, I was asking a lot of questions.
Like, why did how did I get myself into this position?
I was questioning what was I doing in Panama during the lockdowns, because it was, it's like a bad dream, like looking back like a nightmare, like, men's days and women's days and your 2 hours. Like, so I was still pretty new. I'd been here like less than a year. I had a group of friends, but then boom, you're straight into that pandemic lockdown. And business just flipped a switch overnight. Everything went digital. It was a very traditional, the investing space is a very traditional space, and it was very much sitting down face to face with people, getting to know them over coffee, over lunch, in their office or your office. And overnight you couldn't do that. So everything just flipped upside down. Everything went remote, digital signatures, Zoom calls, Teams, all those tools that just sort of came out. So the industry just, completely flipped upside down. And the only thing that got me through that was I was busy. I was on back-to-back calls all day. and people had more money. They couldn't spend it.
Yeah.
So people that
Do you
didn't
think
lose,
people during COVID, they kind of, realized that stuff like this happens and I need to plan for the future kind of mentality?
yeah, 100%. So I think like there was a lot of really people losing their jobs, how do I pay rent, how do I pay my mortgage? People that were able to continue working remotely had a benefit where they were at home, they weren't traveling, they weren't going out, so they had significantly more money, disposable income to spend. And so what do? You can't go out, so they were investing, and so the industry took, and it really changed how a lot of people started investing for the first time. Like there's statistics like the Robinhood number of users in Robinhood in the US just went crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did remind a lot of people about prioritize, bring everyone like sort of back, like have a grounding effect, I think, on everybody, to make sure that and I think a lot of people disagreed, and we can maybe talk about this a little bit about why Panama is popular from like a residency perspective, but a lot of people didn't like the actions that their government took, for example, and I think that was a trigger and why Panama is becoming a lot more popular. Not that Panama made the perfect, every country had a different process and a lot of countries made mistakes, but I think a lot of people realize that if you have one passport, if you have one residency and you don't like what that government's doing, or you don't really have any options.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of having a plan B or backup residency, a lot of foreign investors are, investing in Panama, getting that residency, and for that very reason. So I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes, and I don't want to get, political and say which was right or wrong, but
it was what was happening.
And people, regardless of what happened, you're going to have people that didn't like the action, right? So you're going to have a group of people, not everyone's going to agree with you all the time. So you're going to have a group of people that feel like you, as the government, made the wrong decision, and they want to obviously have options and to leave and things like that. So I think Panama has like positioned itself very well for that, and obviously the real estate option, the qualified investor visa here, coming out of the pandemic has been incredibly popular for that reason, I think.
So you're working at this Chilean law firm or a firm, finance firm or whatever, investment, and at some point you started doing your own thing down here, though. Like how?
Yeah, so I came up with that company. And was working there for the first few years. I was still working there during the pandemic. We started I almost call it like a survival WhatsApp group during the pandemic, and we called it Panamigos. And as we came out of the pandemic, if you remember, we had like 9 p.m. curfews and 10 p.m. curfews, and
they went up to like 10 or 11 or something like that. But
and eventually it was like midnight, and then eventually they scrapped it. And so as we were coming out, because we'd been locked up, we started organizing like different events. The guy Ollie, my business partner, me and him, we sort of set it up, and it just started as a WhatsApp group, and then a social media account and things like that. And it was really after the pandemic, we were organizing events and like just like silly stuff, but for people
it's like networking.
Yeah, and parties and networking.
And it was like all expats, right?
Initially, it was expats, yeah. And it just kept growing. I think now it's over 20,000 people.
And your partner's from where?
He's English.
Oh, he's from England.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's British. I'm from New Zealand. We set it up sort of during the pandemic. He was here with Nestle at the time. And it just kept growing and growing. And now it's a really almost exactly 50-50 split, like expats and Panamanians.
Okay.
Which is really nice, like balance, I think. People moving here, they want like a community. They can meet people, they can meet locals, they can meet other expats and things like that. So it's a really nice sort of balance of the two worlds. And that just sort of grew naturally over time, like slowly over the last 5 years.
How I mean, back in the mid 2010s beginning, there was a lot of foreigners, a lot of expats coming here to Panama because of all the, finance boom we had going on and all the realty boom that we had going on. That, went down as the economy kind of like settled down, as I like to say it. But now I think it's starting to pick up more.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic started like the match on on this fire that's going on, and this snowball effect that's growing, and I'm seeing more foreigners coming down here because you see them on the street. Like my mom's Panamanian, my dad's from Colon. I don't look Panamanian, but people see me talking, they say, yeah, this guy's from Panama. But an expat, sticks out like a sore thumb here. You just can't, hide, and you see them more and more and more. Is this because Panama is becoming a more attractive place for foreign investment? Because down here we only listen what we see and what we hear on the news, but outside, how are foreign investors looking into Panama, and what are they saying?
Yeah, so I do think the market, Panama real estate, has been a bumpy road for a long time, mm-hmm. long before I arrived. And, there were several reasons for that. But I do think the bottom of the market was really during the pandemic. People were in, really bad situations, people losing their jobs. So I think that was really the bottom. The market has been sort of very steadily sort of increasing over that time. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the transactions, percentage of foreigners versus the Panamanians, that number has been increasing. And I know that through the qualified investor visa, they're looking at how to make it more accessible, how to streamline things, but Panama, from an expat perspective, whether that's, and when I say expat, that could be from Canada or the US, that could be from
Colombia, it could be from Argentina,
So there's a lot of Colombia, they've got elections in June. There's a lot of Colombians buying in Panama. And first of all, they get an asset in dollars. Mm-hmm. The peso is actually strengthened a little bit, the Colombian peso, but it's still very volatile. Where's the Colombian peso going to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
The political situation in Colombia is not ideal. So a lot of Colombians, there were more Colombians buying Panama than there are Americans, for example, because they want stability, they want dollars, they don't want the political mess that is in the government to, destroy their, I've paid the equivalent of the 401ks, mm-hmm. their retirement accounts and things like that. But that's a real reality. It's happened in Argentina. It's happened all throughout Latin America. We don't need to talk about Venezuela. So for all of these countries to have Panama almost as like a gateway with the US dollar economy, that stability, the canal, like it is seen as a safe haven for a lot of these countries. Peru 3 years ago, after the elections there was a lot of panicking. There was billions of dollars leaving the country, and it's calmed down. Chile, Argentina, like, so there's a huge flow of capital north from LATAM, and then you've got the capital flowing south from the US and Canada, which is more libertarian-minded people. You've got Canadians that are just looking for like an escape 4 months of the year, escape winter. Yeah. The snowbirds, they want a house, they want to come down for 4 months, but they want a residency card and a bank account along with it. And then you've got other Canadians that just politically don't like what's happening in their country, so they're looking at like making a full exit, full time. Panama, direct flights to a lot of Canadian cities, same time zone. It's a very attractive option, beautiful weather, friendly people,
safe,
probably safer than a lot of Canadian cities at the moment, you know.
Wow.
So, but that surprises people. When my friends in the UK, New Zealand, because Panama, I think, has done a very poor job of marketing itself to the world, and most people that come here are surprised.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's heard of the Panama Papers, the Panama Canal. Most people know it's the thin isthmus, you know, between North and South America. But beyond that, people don't know a lot about Panama. So when they come, even if it's just for a few days in the city, you know, the skyscrapers, the skyline, you know, it's more impressive skyline than, you know, most modern Western cities. And so the moment people are flying in, looking out the window, like, wow,
Wow, it looks like Miami.
Exactly. So people come there. I think a lot of people are surprised in a good way, but also people that haven't been. When I talk to people in New Zealand, when I talk to people in the UK, you know, people think Panama's a third world country, and I think a lot of ways it's catching up very quickly. It's more developed in some ways. I feel safer walking around in Panama City, especially at night, than I would in London, for example. I've been here nearly 7 years, never seen, you know, an act of violence. I've never seen any crime. Obviously, it goes on. I'm not naive.
But it doesn't go on everywhere, you know.
No, exactly. And, you know, with it, you know, like I said, it goes on, but you have to really put yourself in a situation or...
Yeah, you really have to look for it.
Yeah, if you want to get in trouble, you have to go looking for it. There's obviously opportunistic crime, you know, if you leave your phone out, something
petty
like that.
theft and stuff like that.
But, you know, in terms of, I don't think I've ever seen...
we don't have organized crime. What Luke's saying is that how foreign investment works, more or less, is that, you know, people come and invest, and when people talk about expats, they think that, you know, it's going to be an American, it's going to be an European, it's going to be, you know, somebody from Canada, and it's not the case. You know, there's a lot of wealthy people in Colombia, in Peru, and in Chile, and in Argentina, and they buy dollars. Okay, so they buy dollars, but they can't produce dollars in their economy because, you know, rent is not, you know, investments in those countries are not in dollars, you know. So it's very attractive for them to come here, buy a property, and rent it, and then they are producing dollars, and that dollar on their exchange in their country is very good at the exchange because, you know, dollar is very strong compared to el peso in Colombia, for example. So that's why a lot of Panamanians, when they go to Colombia, they think they're John D. Rockefeller, because over there they can go to the good stuff and they can order the good stuff, and over here they can't because it's the dollar. And that's just an uncomfortable truth sometimes, because some of this, you know, political, economic stuff that's going on in South America and also in North America. The thing is that here in Panama, since we don't know what we don't know, we live in this state of ignorance, because Panamanians, they don't migrate. We all stay here, and we all, you know, nag because, you know, we hate whatever we have to hate that day or something, but we don't leave Panama. It's very, very, very uncommon for the Panamanian to leave the country. That does not happen in a lot of other places where people migrate a lot. Now, you from Panamigos, which was a networking stuff that started kind of like, you know, I don't want to say a hobby, but it was just something cool.
It was a hobby. It was just
a hobby, and it was just something to do, and trying to, you know, do the networking or meeting people, or kind of be a gateway into the country for expats. It's turned into a business. It's turned into necessities that you've, I guess, seen and that you suffered yourself when you got here. You know, when you got here, where are you going to live? Who were you going to ask? You know, where's the supermarket? You know, it's just basic stuff that you don't know when you go. You got here as a tourist, basically. Yeah. And then at that point too, then you know, COVID hit, so now you're even more lost.
Exactly. So I think there's an element of sort of arriving and like the adventure of sort of like figuring things out, you know, and learning the culture and how the city operates and things like that. It's exciting, but also when it's like, oh, my car insurance or bank, sometimes it's good to like have a community where you can sort of ask questions and they can sort of point you in the right direction, or I'll speak to this person, they're very helpful.
You skip the trial and error part.
Yeah, exactly. So someone can sort of, if you can have a community where, just put people in touch with good people, whether it's a dentist or a real estate agent or whatever it is, but someone, that's trustworthy, that, comes recommended, it can make that transition like so much easier. And so I think people really appreciate that. And then, I think there's a real lack of just, people are drinking less and less. Like this is a trend we're seeing. People want more. They want to meet people outside of the screens, the phones, but also like, we used to throw like quite big parties. The demand's now more like professional. We want to meet people in a setting.
More coffee settings and not.
Yeah,
not a lot.
It's like coffee parties is like a thing that's taking off of like running groups.
I never understood. I haven't understood the coffee party thing.
No, it's something I haven't.
But you lived in London, in England for a long time, right? I think there's more pubs than people.
Yeah, I mean, London's
there's a lot of drinking over there.
London's a very like full on culture. It's very boozy. It's like drinks at lunch, drinks after work. It's tiring. Because like Tuesday, everyone's like, right, let's go to the pub.
You're hungover from some.
But that's that culture. It's like very like not aggressive, but like quite like you're constantly on the go. You get to the weekend, and you're just wiped out. You reset, and then you go again. I think this was all pre-pandemic, and from what I've heard,
it slowed down. It
slowed down a lot in London, but there's still probably that culture there. Whereas Panama is much more relaxed. It doesn't. I mean, it's not London City. It's not many cities in the world compare to that. And I think a lot of people like it's very relaxed. Panamanians are very friendly, very welcoming. And that goes a long way, I think.
So you started, and then you meet your partner here in Panama.
Yeah, I mean, he arrived. I think
you didn't meet in England.
No, we met here. I think he arrived a month after I did. We joke it was fate, but so the Panamanians just kept growing and growing, and we were just trying to like have a good time with it. We both I was working for this investment firm, he was working at Nestle. It was just this thing that sort of just took off on its own, and we were having fun doing it. It wasn't making any money, but we were enjoying it. We were meeting a lot of people, and for us that was like the most important thing. And we got to a point where it was like, what do we want to, what are we doing with this? What do we want to create? And there was a real need. I think we had some good friends that were in real estate. So we ended up partnering with some very experienced people from real estate and creating Panamigos Realty, and then building out a team. We have an office in Costa del Este. The team speaks 5 languages. Everyone's bilingual. So it's really just sort of built off the back of this community that just sprung up in the pandemic.
Catering to that market that comes here and does not know, where to go, or even, a lot of multinational companies that bring, people from abroad to work here.
It's a huge market. I mean, there's 195.
They want to delegate a lot of the stuff. They don't want to, do the hassle, go see the apartment. They want somebody that's vetted this for me. This is where you want to have your people, because it has a gym and it's the supermarket close by, and nobody's going to come pick your pocket at night, kind of thing. And you kind of package this product up.
Yeah, especially, you've got the young executives coming in, then you've got people moving with their families. There's 195 multinational companies operating in Panama, and that's out in Panama Pacifico. You've got like 3M and Dell, and I think they both employ over 1,000 people each. Costa del Este, you've got Maersk, Nestle, Estee Lauder, Adidas, Caterpillar, big companies that have headquarters here. So they're bringing people in all the time. And they're arriving with a suitcase, maybe never having been here before, and the next day they need to be in the office for their first day of work. I've seen that.
They don't even know where to go to the
the
dry clean.
puts them up in a hotel for 5 nights or something, and you're on your own. And some companies do this better than others. Some companies will have a point of contact, someone that can help them with these things. But it's a big, it's 200 companies. Some of them are 700-800 employees. So there's that. We're not exclusively expats. We have a lot of Panamanian clients as well. We have a lot of my business partner Carlos is Panamanian. He's got a lot of experience, so it's a real mix. But people coming, not knowing anything about Panama, sort of needing to familiarize themselves. We do help a lot with that, and we speak a lot of languages, and we try and focus on like client outcomes and really try and prioritize that. And I think that's why the company's been growing so fast.
And it started your two partners.
Yeah, so we're three partners.
So at the beginning it was y'all three at the office, and that was it.
Exactly, yeah.
And then now I see more people in those pictures, so it's growing a lot.
Yeah,
now.
we're 17, 18 people now in the real estate. So it's
how long did it take y'all to
we've been
to get to this point?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. And I think, like you said before, it's becoming more investors, foreign investors, are looking at Panama for that residency card. People are coming in for 3-4 days. They want to look at a bunch of options. They want to close, and then they're heading off. I did an event in November in Cayman Islands, and you just invest in Panama, just talking everything Panama at the Marriott Hotel there. 250 people registered.
Wow.
We had 195 show up on the night just to hear about Panama as a destination. People there were concerned with cost of living, was going crazy, and very expensive place to live. And Panama, it's a 2-hour flight, direct flight, Cayman Airways. It was a lot of interest, and so people are just intrigued by it. I think it's drawing a lot of people in. So.
What would having more foreign investment here in Panama mean to our economy? Because that's something that people sometimes they oversee, and they don't realize the importance of having foreign investors doing business here, or just having their money here, or having property here. What would that mean if that number goes up?
So you've got foreigners buying property. That's one thing we've talked about. But then you've got like real foreign direct investment. So the best example of this is the mine. Now, people will sit on either side of the street on how they feel about digging up the backyard and extracting copper. But that was a multi-billion-dollar investment. I think at its peak, was generating 5% of GDP, 20,000 jobs. Now, the impact on the environment, is one thing. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of money. And the railway to David, I think it's a British company that's providing a lot of the financial backing for that. There's a French company, I think, that's doing the tunnel for the metro. So there's a lot of companies investing, the Panama ports, so which has been in the news a lot lately. These are all foreign companies that are coming and investing, building infrastructure, whether that's ports, mines, roads, bridges, tunnels. That infrastructure, benefits Panama. Now, obviously, we can discuss the environmental impacts of all these things and I'd prefer
the
nuances, and anything like that. Any mega project, you're going to have people that sit on both sides, right? So. But that's investment, that's foreign investment coming into the country. I love, if you head out of the city down the Pacific coast, you go over the bridge, and at one point the road's like 8 lanes wide, and it's brand new. That's a result of a lot of foreign money coming in, building infrastructure, and the country needs that to grow and compete with the rest of the world, in my opinion. So.
How is because I always like to talk, and I ask you because I know that you being from abroad, especially somewhere, a place like England, taxes are taxes here in Panama get to be, people tend to see them as optional. People don't. People are like, well, I feel like I'm going to pay taxes a little bit today. It doesn't work like that in England or in the United States or in Australia or Japan or any Europe. You not paying your taxes in England is just you go to jail. That there's no negotiating on it if you don't pay. But here in Panama, I think that's also, we don't, even the taxes that we do have to pay are very low in comparison to, other fiscal territories like, first world countries.
I mean, Europe, looking at, top tax rate, 50%,
It's crazy.
Which is, double what the top tax rate here is in Panama. If people, like you said, if people are paying it. So, I mean, Panama is very, and it is catching up,
Mm-hmm.
There's electronic invoice systems and things like that are constantly being updated and changed. And it's just a matter of Panama is catching up. It's not going to happen overnight. But it is, that gap is decreasing. It's going to take some time.
But it's very like property tax, for example. We don't have high property tax like in England. So
property taxes is very low.
Super low.
I was in Cayman, they have a stamp duty transfer tax on 7.5%.
It's crazy.
And every country's different, but annual property taxes, here are very low. And territorial taxation is a big one. If the foreign sourced income is exempt, you can declare it, but
you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Exactly. So it's really the income source within the country's borders what it sort of decides it wants to tax. And there's not that many countries in the world that operate a system like that. So that's, we talked about executives moving here with multinational companies, but that brings a lot of digital nomads, people with online businesses, crypto people. They can base themselves here and have like an online business where their income is outside Panama. That can be a very tax efficient thing for them to do.
Yeah.
Whether people are paying the taxes that they should be paying, in Panama is, obviously everyone should be paying their taxes. People are smudging the
people
accounting
here, they cook the books. Let's say, and I'm not overstating it or just being negative. It's just a reality that we live in because our system's not just that, there's not a punishment on it, and the government doesn't, go after the taxpayer like in other big world countries where it is a mandate, really. It's just, I mean, you just can't go around it.
In most countries, it's jail time.
Yeah. And, but even the little taxes that we do have to pay or the percentages are very small. And I think for investors, at least from my experience when I was in banking, is that they would do the math. They would say, okay, so if I buy a $1 million property in New York, that's going to pay 7% tax a year. Then I have to pay blah, 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 blah on it. And if I invest that in Panama, I don't have to pay property tax. Or if I do, I pay just, 1%, for example, or 2% or whatever. And those numbers made sense over time, being that since Panama's economy is so stable and we don't have these ups and downs, governmental ideologies and all this stuff that goes on in South America, the prices of property tends to stay stable. And usually, prime real estate areas tend to just go up. They don't, you're not going to make, 10-20% every year, but the value of your property will stay, let's say, reasonably stable in time, and it will appreciate in some areas more than others, but you don't get those opportunities somewhere else. The person that brings money here in Panama, that means more stuff for them to buy, because they're going to have to, the trickle down economy that Regan used to talk about all the time. That if you buy a house, you're going to have to buy the dishwasher, you're going to have to buy the refrigerator, you want to have a car, you want to have the bed, the mattress, the sheets, whatever. And that's just from people going around and people just spending money and going to the restaurants. And then, expats like to, they like to find things in life too. We all do. And, going out to a good restaurant here in Panama, it's, a quarter of what it's in Miami or New York or, a big urban area or metropolis in a first world country. So people go out more.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really, restaurant scene here. People visiting, for a week always comment that the amount of good, I don't know if that's just because they didn't have much expectations before they come here, but that's a very common piece of feedback that I get. The restaurant scene, I went to 3 really, really amazing restaurants, so, and to that point, the cost is significantly lower. But even if you have, let's say you have a digital nomad here who's living here, talking about trickle down, they have an offshore business, so it's not taxed, whatever. Mm-hmm. They're going out, they're spending money. Government's still taking 7% of every dollar that they spend. They're spending money in bars and restaurants. Those restaurants are hiring people. They're buying food. And, you have 1,000 people doing that, 10,000 people doing that. That's more jobs, and money circulating, right? And things like that.
Now, you started the real estate and now you're going into, your roots, which is finance too. So how did that evolve into what you're...
Out of frustration, I would say. So I was running an investment firm. I came here to set up an investment firm. And I think the investment industry, you were from a banking background, is very, with all the tools and technology that we have available, I think the investment and the finance industry has lagged behind for so long. And I work for a very good company, but, I started having different ideas about the direction that I wanted to go. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, if I want to action these ideas, I can't be working for somebody else's company. It has to be my own. And so Vita Wealth was sort of born out of that. And we put a very experienced, team together. We're licensed locally by the superintendents here. I have a very strong team, principal executive, my compliance team, very experienced advisors that come from banking, from other investment firms in Panama and abroad. But it really came out, it really came from an area of frustration. If I want to change things, it has to be my company. We have to be able to set the tone and the direction.
How are you doing things different? What were the flaws that you wanted to change?
I think a lot of it is just sort of transparency, how people are remunerated. A lot of times, I don't want to just criticize everyone in the industry, but a lot of banks, there's a lot of hidden fees, investment accounts. I've seen some absolute horror stories. There might be trading commissions where an advisor is incentivized just to actively trade on your account, because every time they trade, they're making 25 basis points or 0.25% commission. Yeah. So you now have an advisor that's looking after your money, that's incentivized to just buy and sell all the
making
time.
Trades and stuff.
And they're just getting rich off that. So trying to structure things that, obviously as a business, you need income to survive, but trying to focus on client outcomes, having that, we want to have our clients for life, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than life. Maybe their children, maybe their family estate, potentially could be working together for 20, 30, 50 years. You might tell your financial advisor things that besides your wife, nobody else knows. It's a very personal relationship, and you want someone that's going to have your best interests at heart. Obviously, they have to earn an income to survive, but it has to be fair and balanced, and putting the client's interest first. And if their account is going to be profitable and they're being looked after, and they understand the model and how it's working, then everybody's happy and your business is going to, I think, be much more successful than the alternative where like 3 years in, like what's this fee, what's this deduction, you didn't explain this, and then like trying to like hide. It's just that transparency, I think, is really important, and then bringing in like modern tools and so that the modern tools to just help people understand and visualize what's going on and things like that. So
now I always try to preach the importance of investing and trying to set aside the tone that investing and saving money, it's not the same. It's like keeping money in your savings account, that's not investing. That's just not keeping it in your under the mattress. But due to the lack of financial education we have here in Panama, we suffer this, people here just don't invest. Foreigners and, expats and, but they do have this financial education, and first world countries also, they, you hear more, what's your portfolio? How much are you investing on the, long term, what on the short term? Are you saving up for your retirement? But people here just, they just don't, Luke. People think they're going to work till they die. And then, it comes to a place when you can't work anymore and you have to live and you have to pay your medical bills and stuff. And sometimes you have kids and you don't have a estate, or you don't have a will, or you don't have, if you die, what are you going to leave them? A bunch of bills and, the beat up and the car and, the wallet and, the pen, that's, you can't buy groceries with that.
No, and especially like people are mourning, like if something happens to you, people are in a mourning, they don't want to be sorting out like a mess, a financial mess, as well as mourning the fact that you're not there. But that, like I said, that was for me when I moved to Chile, that was that. And financial education is a problem all around the world. And I think this is what the wealthy families do well, is they understand the importance of passing on that knowledge or teaching their children about money, or not everybody does it, but just generalizing, wealthy families tend to teach their family, their children, a financial education, or at least have them sort of focus on the importance of it. But that's a problem anywhere in the world. In Latin America, I find it's much more present day focused, and people aren't thinking about the future. Like I said, in the UK, it's much more rigid. In the US, you start working, you start contributing to a 401k immediately. Contribution rates are really high. You get tax. Here you have options, Pro Futuro, Progreso, etc. It's not quite the same. It's better than nothing, obviously, but people, sometimes people, I'll put $100 a month into Pro Futuro and that's my retirement sorted. And it's like, how much are you going to have if you work that out? How much do you need? You rely on Social Security. Is Social Security, Panama, like the ratings agencies are downgrading Panama. One of the three, I think it was Fitch, is now rated, Panama's lost its investment grade rating. Two of the rating agencies still have Panama as investment grade, but for how much longer, I don't know. And the main reason that they cited was that Social Security is bankrupt. And obviously Molino, that was one of his things. It's not a very popular thing to do for any politicians to come and gut Social Security, or to put the retirement age up or cut benefits. You're not getting re-elected if you do that, but it needs to be done because there's no money and there's an aging population. And so no one in Panama, but also globally, you don't want to be, especially if you're young. If you're retiring in the next couple of years, maybe you'll get away with it. But if you're a young individual and you're looking at 10,
you can't bet on your Social Security for retirement. Hell no.
You've got to be self-sufficient. And so I spend a lot of my time like educating people about the importance of, time, especially if you're young, time's on your side, compounding growth, blah, blah, blah. I talk about this all day.
Yeah, me too. That doesn't stick in though.
No, but it's that mentality of like the UK, the US. You do you get your first job out of university or school.
You just start saving for retirement.
Yeah, you have to. It's mandated.
Yeah.
And people obviously then put voluntary amounts on top of that as well. So, and that mind shift again continues. You do that for 40 years. You know, by the time you do stop working, you've got a nice nest egg that you're not reliant on the state. And if you do get Social Security, great, but it's a bonus. You can't.
Yeah, you just use it to get coffee and buy groceries and stuff, which is what, you know, I always try to preach people, especially young people, because they have the upper hand because of compound growth and in time. So, you know, I always make the example that, you know, classic, you know, you put $100 every month until you're 60 and from you're 18 and you're going to be a millionaire at the end. That $1 million is not going to buy you what it's buying you now. Of course not. It's going to buy you probably half, you know, if inflation keeps the trend. But still, you're still going to have, you know, $500,000 worth of buying value at this point of view, at this point in time.
$1 million that's being devalued by half is better than nothing.
So yeah, I'd rather have $1 million in 30 years than nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I always, you know, I'm a big critic also on the banking industry here in Panama, because I believe that we don't have, because in the United States, you have a lot of ways of investing in, you know, as little money as you have. You can put $50 in a Robinhood or Interactive Brokers or whatever. But here in Panama, you can't. We don't have, you know, massive investment products besides, you know, those Pro Futuro and Progreso or whatever. So we have generation after generation that they can't generate wealth over time. And I think that's what the biggest Social Security problem is here, that we have a whole country depending on that retirement check, which is not going to be a lot. And, you know, if at all. And then, you know, our birth rates are going down, so we don't have how to, you know, replenish our working population. And that's a trend also in big countries as well. And that's a huge problem. So the only way out, as I see it, is just investing money.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, there's no other way around it. And I think banks have to put, their best will in making these products so people start investing more. Singapore did it 50, 60 years back. China copied it. That's how they got, you know, out of poverty, making poor people save money.
Singapore, basically an island city with no resources, you know.
Singapore is just a city. It's just there's no like, it's just Singapore.
Yeah.
So if you go to Singapore, you went to the country and the city.
Yeah.
That's it. I always say it's like the Star Wars. The whole planet was a city. That's Singapore. There's no like, you know, little town, or, you know, you went to Chorrera or to Arraijang, or, you know, no, you went to Singapore. That's it. And they've gotten out of, you know, from, you know, being, their story is just remarkable. But this point is that how they're doing it is, and Charlie Munger always talked about it, you know, before he passed away, is that making poor people save money will, you know, generate wealth, invest money, generate wealth over time in a way that they, you know, probably the first generation is not going to see the fruits of it, but the second and the third will, because they will have that compound growth and they will have a way more robust economy. We don't have that here, and we could have it.
We could 100%.
We could have it, but the big banks need to, you know, create those instruments for everyone. I know you have them for, you know, your clients, which are obviously, you know, more structured, and, you know, they have another, they have other needs. But what I would like for people hearing this is that for us as an economy to just keep growing over time and not being so dependent on the Panama Canal and on, Social Security or on government investment or pushing, because government now has to, put down $1 billion a year, but that $1 billion could go to, towards building roads or having school, and that is cash money that has to be put in the Social Security.
And they can't print money either.
We can't print money, so we have to
borrow it.
Yeah,
if we don't tax it.
Thank God we can't print money, because if not, we would be worse than Venezuela. Thank God we don't have the printing machine, man.
We don't have to worry about that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But at all of this, even nevertheless, all everything that happens here in Panama, we still have a very, very, very attractive place for people to come down, because we have a safe haven. Let's say it that way. We have a safe place for people to put their money in. We have huge banks, international banks here. And I think more banks will be coming down as in the next couple of years. I see more. There used to be a lot of American banks here. They left, of course, because the market's so small. But I think with all those, political changes that are going on in South America, and probably the states are going to be having a more pronounced presence in the region. I think American banks are going to feel safer to come down, because that's the other thing. American banks had a lot of regulations and a lot of stuff, and then cutting the red tape down here also, it's kind of tricky. How did you feel when you got here with all the red tape?
It's painfully slow banking here. I mean, you touched a lot of points, and it is slow. I think it's improving. But Panama's a small country. It's not the US. We don't have the Robin Hood apps, the things like that. The US is what, 300 million versus Panama's 4 million. So it is a small economy at the end of the day. But New Zealand is 5 million people, so a very similar size. But they make things much more accessible there. So it's just about, maybe the big banks don't want to move in because the market's not here. But and then the other problem that we have is, if you're a Panamanian or if you live in Panama, unfortunately, the reputation of Panama Papers. So if you're dealing with international banks, and Panama can often be a red flag. A lot of banks and investment firms won't touch people that live in Panama, because the reputation of the Panama Papers, even though it was completely unfair, it was just... How
is that right now? Is that still a thing?
No, I mean, it's getting better. There's still remnants, people still, but every year, we're coming off the different lists. We come off the US list, we come off the Gaffey list. So we're coming off a lot of these, and the lists are ridiculous, money laundering and terrorism financing share one list. So until, we came off, was it the Gaffey list, at the same time that the protests were going on about the mine. So this was really good news for the country. It sort of got drowned out by the people who were clashing in the street. And that was a really important list, because they mixed money laundering and terrorism financing into one list. So we were on a list that Iran, and
which is crazy. I mean, the people that were, it was a legion of doom of countries that were in those lists. I think we totally unfair in all sorts, because I don't see...
Panama Papers was incredibly unfair. It was just it just had a catchy name. All the money was in Cayman. Mossack Fonseca was in Panama. The law firm was in Panama. The foundations, whatever, were here, but the money was elsewhere, and the clients weren't here. The clients were football stars and politicians. I think the King of Thailand, David
that's
Cameron.
what made it catchy. President of Iceland or something, prime minister or whatever. But
living in countries where they were supposed to declare and pay tax on their global income, but they were hiding money through a structure in Panama, but the money was all offshore. Just through some law firm. But unfortunately, Panama Papers was a catchy name.
I interviewed Mr. Jorgen.
Really?
Mr. Jorgen Mossack. I interviewed him, and it was. I mean, I don't want to say I enjoyed it because it was a sad interview. There's, his story was just remarkable. How him and his partner, built up this industry from scratch here, basically, and just kind of made it better, made it faster, made it more efficient in a way that they could compete with Delaware, and they could compete with BVI, and they could compete with, Island and Man or Cook Islands or, whatever. And we did it our way, and there was more law firms doing this. They're still doing it. The business hasn't stopped. They're still doing it. The only thing that Mossack Fonseca paid the price. It was a hack, and then at the end,
It's a whistleblower.
They wanted to say it was a whistleblower, but at the end, it was a hack. And of course, it was important to make the difference on it, because if it was a hack, the newspaper or the journalist organization that did the piece, they couldn't use the information because it was a hack. It was something out of crime, so you just couldn't use it.
That's why they described it as a whistleblower
That's
case.
what they described it as a
leak.
whistleblower. And the worst part is that it was a joint effort where more than 400 media outlets pull up the story at the same time, and everybody made money off of it. The Germans that wrote the book, they sold the book and the movie, and they made millions on it. A lady from here in Panama that helped the international journalist, she made a book too, and she made a good chunk of pie on it. And media, I think the country turned their back on them, and I also think that the lawyers here in Panama also turned their back on them.
I think they didn't want to be associated.
They didn't want to be associated. That's them. That's blah blah blah. And then
we do things differently over here.
Yeah, we do things differently. Bullshit. And then a couple of years later, then another law firm was on the hook, and then they wanted to do the Panama Papers Part 2, and then apparently the president at that time sent a very 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 nasty letter to them saying that change the name Panama, just put another paper, another name, and
Paradise Papers,
and then that was after. And then the other one was Pandora, and then the Paradise was somewhere in BVI, and then they just started doing this trying to milk the last drop out of the cow off of it. But it was I think the damage, because since the day-to-day here, Luke, people don't do
it wasn't people in Panama,
it wasn't. This is a service, this is a product that day-to-day people here in Panama don't use. We don't go out and do corporations or do trust, or we don't. What, 5% of the population, 10% probably do corporations and stuff like that, but we don't use those mechanisms, and but they're very common.
Around New Zealand, we have New Zealand Foreign Trusts, which are foreigners having a structure in New Zealand. The assets is exactly the same, but New Zealand, that's fine.
It was Delaware. Delaware does it. I mean, probably the time that takes us to finish this podcast, we could open up an LLC in Delaware in 5 minutes, just over the internet, over your cell phone. It's just ridiculous. So all of that, the industry went on its way, but we ended up with the short end of the stick, paying the price and paying that reputational damage that is just irreversible. You can't put back the broken plate.
And it is getting better, and it's taking time, and we're coming off these lists one by one, and there's still remnants of that. And sometimes I deal with institutions, banks outside, and they're like, "Oh, Panama's high risk." Why? We came off. Have you updated? When did you last update? We came off this list 18 months ago. We came off this list 12 months ago. Have you updated your systems in the last year? Because Panama shouldn't be deemed high risk according to these metrics, and you're lagging. So I like to give back sometimes, and sometimes they ignore me, but sometimes they might pass that on, like, hey, we should review this. But it will take time before it's completely gone. But it's really unfortunate. And what that means, though, is for a Panamanian that wants an account in the US, or a lot of institutions, maybe you can do it, but maybe you need enhanced due diligence. You need to provide more source of wealth documentation. So it's more barriers to entry. It's more compliance, is
more red tape, more bureaucracy.
Yeah, and we have enough of that here, right? We don't need that when we go outside of Panama to invest and things like that. We want to streamline things, but that Panama connotation is still lingering. It is getting better, but
the whole industry has changed. I remember Mr. Jorgen telling me that 50, 40 years ago, you would go and open up a bank account in the U.S., in Miami, in BVI or whatever, and they pretty much sold you the corporation. So they sold you the whole thing as a package, as a deal, as a McDonald's combo. I don't know how you want to call it, but you went and you got your French fries, you got your Coke, and you got your burger. And part of that combo was a corporation. You got your bank account, you got your debit card, your checking account, whatever. So you were all set.
It's coming. Yeah, tick.
Thank you. And they kind of had it all. They had them all pre-made, pretty much. It was just kind of like like selling pizzas or T-shirts. I don't know. So, after all this, compliance and all this stuff that goes on starts picking up, it gets here to Panama. But Europe puts us in this gray list also, which is nonsense, to tell you the truth. I mean, the amount of crap that continent's going through right now, and how they haven't gotten their act together with all the bureaucracy right now over there, which is practically an institution over there. It's just part of the system. It's just incredibly sad. And for them to put us on these lists and stuff, it's just...
People think that, Panama, or anyone can get a bank account, but... you walk into a bank, even if you're walking off the street, realize that.
Yeah, you can't say that out loud, because people here are going to be, hey. It's not that you haven't opened up a bank account lately, Luke, or something. Because
no, but you just
it's super hard.
It's a pain in the ass. It's
super hard.
It's, your signature doesn't match exactly. I need you to do this 17,000 times, and I need this document, and it can take months, it can take weeks. If you don't know someone that that can just help you with the process, streamline it a little bit, it can be just completely.
We have those abbreviated bank accounts, which you can only have like $5,000 or $10,000 a year or something. It's just it's very just kind of like as an entry bank account for you to have a bank.
It's access to the system.
So you have access to the system, for you to have a cash card, or have the Yappy or whatever, but you can't have that for investors. They want to come here, and then they ask a bunch of questions. Do you live here? Do you not live here? You can't have no. Then they ask a whole lot of stuff. And one thing that people don't have enough is time. So you can't be taking people's up time for it, and they have to look for information, and then, God willing, you have a bank executive that kind of wants to move forward with stuff.
It's on side, actually.
Yeah, it's on your side, we're helping you get the stuff and helping you. We can do this, we can do that. If you have this public servant mentality that it's this and that. Yeah. Oh no, I just brought you a copy. No, it's not good. It has to be a certified copy from a guy named Joe. Well, Joe didn't come. I don't care. You have to bring. It just makes it dumb.
Yeah, no, it is. It's painful. I mean, that you mentioned like the bureaucracy, the red tape before, and it is a painful experience. Whether it's changing the deed on a property, or changing the name on your electricity bill, when you rent an apartment, all these things are
you do that all for them then.
Yeah, I mean, we have
That's
people
why you have this, market.
Yeah.
Which is not even foreign. I think
it's the idea is
Panamanians will use this every day.
Well, yeah, exactly. But like having, like changing, updating, renewing your plates on your car, all of these small things that if you're a foreign investor, you come in once every 2 years to meet the residency requirements, or like is maybe your Spanish isn't perfect. These quite simple things can take a whole day.
Yeah.
Going
or weeks.
So you need someone that not hold your hand, but can sort of guide you through this process, and even just changing the name, on a car. If you sell your car, just that transaction, having someone that can just do that process for you, and streamline it is super valuable, I think.
There's just stuff and steps on just regular stuff, in the States, you after you get your license the first time, I don't think you ever have to step on the DMV until you're like 80 or something. But you don't. Like here, it's like you have to go there. Like you're obliged to just be there, and you make the line and be there 4 or 5 hours of
just half a day,
consuming time, and that's if you were lucky. Because if you weren't lucky, and then the system crash, or there's no internet or whatever, then you're screwed. You have to go on the next day, and it's just.
But I think that's why we've been so popular as a business, and why people recommend us, because they hear these nightmares, they hear these stories. Oh no, but such and such helped me with that. It was actually super easy. I think that but you need to understand the pain points, and you need to understand someone coming in, buying real estate, their Spanish is so-so, they don't have any local connections, someone can help them, having someone that can sort of just hold their hand, tickle, take them around, do all these things seamlessly is really important, I think.
Buying property here, is it more, because buying property here, I sometimes tell people that, because here in Panama, we don't have the escrow, like in the States. In the States, it's just like, it's very unreal, to tell you the truth. Like if you've been in an escrow transaction, you just pretty much just go sit down, you sign and take your keys. That's it. There's no, registro público, and you have to go to the lawyer, and you have to do that. And you have all the stuff that, a day transaction turns into 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, it depends.
If everything goes right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're coming in to buy property, you're a cash buyer. The banks obviously can hold up a lot of things. It's going to depend on the seller. Are they up to date with their taxes? All these things. A lot of people are buying from developers that have processes streamlined. So it's really, versus the developer has everything set. They have their standardized contracts and everything like that. And foreigners can come in, they can buy, whether that's something that's built or off plan. That can be very streamlined and quite simple. If you're coming in and buying an apartment off somebody, anytime a bank is involved, if they have a mortgage or you're wanting financing, then it is going to lead to delays. The banks have certain criterias, and they just don't move. They're not in a rush, so it can take a couple of months to once two people agree just to have that all finalized, and they want to see certain documents and the public registry and things like that. So
and public registry, it's pretty fast. That's 3, 4, 5 days or something. But
it's the banks that
it's
really
the banks,
hold
and
up.
you have to go sign it, and the guy goes on, and then when you sign, he signs, and then it's like, oh, okay, so you have to bring back your, you're up to date with your water bill, and the water bill, paper is 30 days. Void. So and then
the bank's taken longer than 30 days.
30 days.
And it was only valid for 30
days. Go another one, and then it's just that back and forth that can take up a lot of your time and day, and that's why. And those are problems that regular Panamanians just suffer. So I can't imagine being a foreigner or being an expat coming here to Panama and trying to navigate those waters without some sort of guideline or something.
I mean, we have a Panamanian lawyer on our team that speaks 5 languages. So we try and have that in house that really right, this is going to take a while, but we're going to make it as seamless and as quick as painless as possible. And this is what to expect, and outlining the expectations, not having someone think something's going to take 2 weeks and then it takes 4 months, because then people get pissed off and it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. But you say, look, this isn't going to happen overnight. We'll have it sorted in 2 months. This is the process. We're going to sign here. We'll take care of as much as we can for you. Then people are happy with it. People go into something understanding the situation and they have clear expectations. So outline that at the port, rather than try and hide that, and then because they're going to experience it later anyway, and then they're just going to be annoyed at you for
not telling it straight up.
Yeah, exactly. So we try, and that's something that we really try and do is streamline all of this stuff and make it as easy as possible.
How do you see Panama in the next couple of years?
I think we're on the precipice of something big, and you were talking about Singapore before, and I love the example, like Lee Kuan Yew. I read My Singapore years ago. It was one of my favorite books. And people often say to me, Panama should be the Dubai of Latin America. Shut up. No, Dubai got lucky. They struck oil.
Yeah.
Singapore became one of the wealthiest countries in the world through pure economic policy. They didn't strike gold or oil or any of these things.
Nothing.
Lee Kuan Yew lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for 40 years. He was very selfless. He did, he imprisoned a lot of people as well, so it wasn't perfect. But it was economic policy that allowed Singapore to bloom from basically an island state with no natural resources into a
They had no running water. They had no streets. They had no... It was just, as poor as you can imagine. And, now you see Singapore and you're like, man, what happened?
Exactly. So people say, Panama should be the, Dubai. I'm like, no, it shouldn't. It should be the Singapore of Latin America. And I always like pulling people up on that because,
But I don't think we could stand Lee Kuan Yew here 48 hours. Imagine that. Because, Lee Kuan Yew was, was the president, the guy that he ruled with an iron fist. This guy wasn't, soft in any form.
I think he executed 5,000
bunch.
Prisoners in his first year.
Probably more, and even with corruption and drugs and anything. It's just like, if you're caught with drugs in Singapore, that's death penalty. You imagine having death penalty here in Panama. That's just like, who are you going to execute a ball? And you're going to see all this. We live in a more, because that's the pain points of the democracy is just that way. We have to listen to everyone. But Lee Kuan Yew wasn't listening to everyone. He was listening to what had to be done, and in that way, that's what they have. But the essence is that, and what I learned from Singapore's story is that with the right economic policy, you can have huge changes in 30 years. China did it too.
Yeah.
China did it too. China was a fucking a fisherman's country. They weren't doing what they're doing now into production and stuff. So now they're second world's largest economy. And Singapore's GDP is like $500 billion. Panama is like, pushing on 86 at the most. But 50 years back, Singapore's GDP was, I don't know, $20 billion or something at the most. I don't know.
It was a very impoverished country.
Was,
it came from nowhere.
It was just horrible. So right economic policy, but that has to also be the country and its citizens to be willing to make those sacrifices and to have, good politicians that are sophisticated, as I say, and that are smart, and they know that they need to, build a country in the next 50 years, not, try to get votes for the next public election or something, because we are very short-minded politicians and very short-minded social structure here.
It goes back to what I was talking about, the cultural differences, trying to get people to think.
People have short memory spans.
Think about their long term, trying to think about 20, 30 years rather than the next 2 years or things like that.
Lee Kuan Yew made English the country's language.
Yeah, it was the second
He
official
changed
language.
it. He changed it on one day. From now on, we're not going to speak whatever we were speaking before. From now on, everyone's going to speak English. We don't know English. Well, learn fast.
Yeah.
That was the answer. You know, they welcomed a lot of foreigners too. But he used to say he didn't want the fruit pickers. The fruit pickers for him wasn't the people working. That was the people just, you know, living off the government and living off welfare or whatever. So he wanted smart people come into the country and, you know, have more competition or whatever. It's a remarkable story. I love the story of Singapore. I don't think we can stand a Lee Kuan Yew here.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it was a really good economic policy, but yeah, it was an iron fist, and you had to toe the line, or you know, you were in big trouble. But I think going back, you know, Panama. Not that we're going to have a Lee Kuan Yew that's going to transform, you know, overnight, but we are in a really good position. And I think the world, you just look at what happened. You know, every day Trump's doing something insane. You know, he was talking about the canal. Now it's Greenland. You know, maybe by the time this podcast comes out, he's bombed Iran. You know, with everything that's happening there at the moment. And I think people are like sick of it. You know, obviously Democrats are, but even Republicans like, this is tiring. Like, can we not just relax? And so there's a lot of people in the US that are like, just, you know, I don't like where the country's going, and whether I just have an investment property in Panama and a cedula in my pocket, and I can get on a plane tomorrow and I can be there and I have a bank account with some money in it and a debit card and a property, and at the moment something that I don't like happens, I can get on a plane
and you leave. And
they're not going to ask me, you know, for my outbound flight at the airport and my 3-month tourist visa. You know that you can come and you can live and you can rent and, or, you know, move into your own property. And I think like that, plus all the political instability in Latin America and South America, we talked about Peru and Venezuela.
It's a good window.
Colombia. So all that money is coming up looking for stability. The Americans and Canadians, they're looking for backup plans, and the Canadians, you know, to escape, you know, the cold winters, but a lot of them are politically minded as well. And especially after the recent elections, people really thought that things were going to turn around, but now they're resigned to more of the same. In Europe, you know, the Italians, French, Spanish, the British. I recently was elected as the chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce here in Panama for the next 2 years, and you know we have big British companies, you know, pharmaceutical companies, GSK, Diageo, you know, which is Johnny Walker, and Tanqueray, and I hope I'm not going to say any too brands in case I mess it up. But it's
Diageo is probably
I think they are the
first
largest
or the largest liquor importer and just liquor owner of brands. You know, I think they have Buchanan's also. I think I like Buchanan's. So yeah, I think Europe's history, it's been amazing at some point, but I just think they haven't been able to get along ever.
No, and you touched on it before about high taxes. You know, I think the top tax rate in the UK is 45%.
Horrible.
They're putting the retirement age up from 65 to 67. You know, Panama is still 57 for women, 62 for men. It's still very, very low. But UK, the retirement age is going up to 67. People are paying, you know, up to 45% taxes, and people are saying why. And especially in, you know, places like France, and I've got some very good friends from Sweden here. You know that everyone's here. Look, and a lot of the Europeans are a little bit more libertarian minded, I would say. And you know, a lot of the Brits are heading east to places like Dubai and stuff like that. But I think that goes back at the beginning. I said Panama does a terrible job of marketing itself to the world.
Totally.
You got Costa Rica next door. When people think of Costa Rica in the US and New Zealand, they think of like these lush green rainforests, the clean green image.
You've been to Costa Rica?
Yeah, San Jose doesn't.
I wouldn't live in Costa, and I love Costa Rica. Don't get me wrong, I love Costa Rica, but man, I would have lived in Costa Rica more than a month.
But San Jose, you can't compare San Jose to Panama
San Jose. It looks like Chorrera 40 years ago.
So I mean, like, but that's an example of Costa Rica has marketed itself.
But they have a Four Seasons and they have a Ritz, and we don't have a Ritz over here.
No,
or a Four Seasons, or not yet. But
I think they're building a Four Seasons, aren't they?
I don't know if they're going to build it anywhere, but Costa Rica has one now, operating, and they have a Ritz, and they have huge hotel chains, and they have a lot of tourists that go down and invest and buy property and live over there.
But I think those tourists are going because of that marketing of how Costa Rica portrays itself.
Of course.
But Panama has everything Costa Rica has. We've got the jungles, we've got the mountains, we've got the beaches, we've got the rivers, and we have Panama City, which is a thriving metropolis that you can't even compare San Jose to in 1,000 years.
No.
So everything Costa Rica has and more. It's, the airport is 1,000 times more connected.
Oh, God. Costa Rica's airport looks like a bus station.
We have the US dollar. We have that stability. So Panama should win on all of the metrics for a foreigner trying to, but a lot of them are going to Costa Rica, and that's just because Panama hasn't marketed itself. But the world is sort of waking up to Panama, I believe, and it's like a hidden jewel. And
there's a lot of people that come down now. Now with social media, you have a lot of tourists, and you have a lot of those, these content creators that come here and do content, and they are just amazed. I have one of my very, very, very good friends, Ricky Martinez. He's the owner of Filthy Friday in Bocas, and the amount of people that go there, 95% of his clientele that go to this party, which happens every Friday, are from outside. They're not Panamanians.
They're young backpackers.
They do the backpacking trail or whatever, and a lot of his clients come from Costa Rica because Costa Rica sells Bocas as a tourist destination. They do a better job selling one of our main. You can't go Bocas Island. It's just, I don't know. You've been to Bocas, right? Yeah. You go there and it's just impossible not to think like, wow, how can this island not be
1,000 times more popular?
1,000 times more. It's better than any place I've ever seen in my life or whatever. And then you have all this, infrastructure there that's just torn down. You don't have enough running water. Electricity may go when there's a lot of people in the island and getting stuff fixed up. The roads, there's
the protests. That was heartbreaking watching them trash the airport.
Oh, it was just horrible. I went over there and I filmed some stuff over there, and it was just nasty. And then there, when it rains a lot, just the whole street would just smudge with water and sewer, and it's just you can't have a tourist destination looking like that. And if there's, there has to be investment from the government just to have them be right, because there's money that's willing to go invest over there. They have to build another airport. You just can't land a big enough airplane there. So you have Elon Musk goes to Bocas, right?
Yeah.
So he goes over there, and he goes and stays in those island villas or whatever. But his plane, this is from people that lived over there that saw the man land down. His plane is just a jet, so it's a big jet. And for them to land it, it was very hard. You could blow the engine up because the runway is so short, so they have to do whatever they have to do. But just trying to get off the strip also, you just can't land big enough planes there. The infrastructure is not there. So that's just stuff that is better than any other tourist product that we have here. But it's like you say, we're not doing enough.
Oh, you combine that
for marketing,
Sun Blast, the Pearl Islands.
Because I'm a big critic of the tourist ministers here. Not this one, but all of them. So I tend not to I put them all on the same bag. But I'm changing my words now, Luke. Now I say they're not doing anything. I just say that they're not doing enough. So they do more because it has to be a country policy. It has to be a country goal objective to have more tourists, and then we just can't be having a tourist economy either, because we have to diversify, because if not, we're going to suffer like Spain is suffering. You know, all the tourists now, a lot of people are not going to certain places because of these algae that went to the beach, and now people just don't go there. So now the whole town is just, you know,
I think Tulum or Cancun had that
Tulum,
problem
the
as
whole
well.
thing. Now Tulum is just broke. Now people are just selling, you know, their property on you know, a nickel on the dollar, because now Tulum is just empty. You know, it was just a fad apparently.
After the I was there after the pandemic, and I booked a week and I left after 3 days because it was just it was a painful experience.
It was empty, and then the people, and you know, and it's not an insecurity thing, because it's not that it's insecure. It's just that people just are not going there anymore, and that happens. But that does not happen here. That does not have to happen here in Panama. Thank you for coming, Luke. I think you are gonna have to come another day also to talk of stuff that you see interesting out there, because of course, since you have that, you know, eyes and ears outside of Panama as well, you can always kind of come here and tell your point of view of how people out there are looking at us.
Yeah, I think, you know, I always tell especially Panamanians, like how much I love being here, and I can apply for my passport in a couple of months' time. And you know, I say that, you know, my plan is to stay here long term, and often I met with confusion. You know, why do you love Panama? But yeah, I feel like we could have talked all day and covered 1,000 different
Panama
topics.
Is easy, man. It's just, I mean, it's my mom's from Panama. I lived in the States until I was like 10 or 12, and you know, I moved down here, and my dad's from my family from my dad's side. They live in Houston, and they all live over there. My cousins live over there. My uncle, well, he passed away, but you know, but my whole family from my father's side's up there, and then from my mom's side, it's down here. My sister lives in California, and then, you know, the States is just in a whole nother different place. There's distances are far away, you know, the traffic, and over here we get to places in like, sometimes you can get to 2-3 kilometers in half an hour or 5 minutes. It just depends on
we still complain about
God, you know, but there's, I mean, we live like the stuff, how I say that Panama is outside, and that we live in a kind of like, I don't know, bubble, or kind of like a fantasy world, to tell you the truth. I don't know if you read a lot, but it's kind of like Macondo, Garcia Marquez. You know, we live in a place where it's surreal, the stuff that's happening here, and you say it out loud in anywhere in the world, and you're like, man, you're full of it, Brian. You're joking, and then I'm not, you know. And they show it, and I'm like, they're like, they can't believe a lot of stuff that goes down here, and it's so laid back and so easy. But at some point, you know, you have to pay your toll, as I say. You know, you have to learn your ropes. You have to learn how stuff works in a place like this, because it's not straightforward at all.
No, but it's part of
the magic,
the package. You know, if you came here and you had German efficiency, it just wouldn't be Panama, and it wouldn't work
at all.
It would be this weird dynamic. But
thank you for coming.
It was a pleasure. No, it was nice to be here and chat everything Panama, and appreciate it.
All right, see ya.